And behold, the veil of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth quaked, rocks were split, tombs were opened, and the bodies of many of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming forth from their tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. The centurion and the men with him, who were keeping watch over Jesus, feared greatly when they saw the earthquake and all that was happening, and they said, there were many women there, looking on from a distance, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was himself a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be handed over. Taking the body, Joseph wrapped it in clean linen and laid it in his new tomb that had been hewn in the rock. Then he rolled a huge stone across the entrance to the tomb and departed. But Mary Magdalene and the other Mary remained sitting there facing the tomb. The next day, the one following the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, Pilate said to them,
"The guard is yours. Go, secure it as best you can."
So they went and secured the tomb by fixing a seal to the stone and setting the guard. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
With our celebration of Palm Sunday, in a certain sense, we bring almost to a conclusion our celebration of Lent as we prepare to celebrate the great holy days of the Triduum, in which we come together to enter into more deeply into our relationship with God through his suffering, through his death, and through his resurrection. In a sense, these are really the great holy days of the Church, and I would encourage you to share in each of those and to celebrate each of those with us, whether it be here at Saint Andrew Cathedral or in your own parish church or wherever you may happen to be at the particular time. Because these are very special days for us, because they help us to understand ourselves better, and they help us to understand and penetrate in a very real way the very nature of God himself. One of the interesting passages in the Passion account of St. Matthew that we heard today is that after the death of the Lord, it mentions that the veil in the sanctuary was broken and opened up. And in a certain sense, I suppose we could look upon that as something that would be kind of almost a natural kind of occurrence or some sort of a natural disaster. But there is a symbolic meaning, if you will, behind all of that, that I think is worth our reflecting on today for a few moments. And that is, the sanctuary had a curtain, and the curtain separated people from the Holy of Holies, and only certain people were allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. But with the death and the resurrection of the Lord, that curtain was broken and taken down, and it allowed both those who were outside the sanctuary to come to a better understanding and a deeper sense of who God really was, and it allowed God, in a certain sense, to enter into our human lives and into a world that is filled with death and sin and darkness, and transform that world into a world that is filled with life, filled with joy, and filled with God's love. And in a sense, as the veil is taken away, we see the cross, and we see Jesus on the cross, if you will. And in him we find no bitterness, there's no vengeance, no lack of patience, all of which is revealed in his dealings with the various figures in the Passion account that we heard. And as we know from listening to that Passion account, we know that Judas betrayed him, one who was close to him, one of his friends. And we know that ultimately Judas took his own life, not particularly because of betrayal, but because he refused to receive God's saving grace. We have the disciples in the Passion account who were weary and who fell asleep at the moment at which Jesus needed them the most to lift him up as he struggled with what lay before him. We have the violence that is expressed in the Passion account as well. The violence of the ear being severed, and we have the violence of the words and the speaking of lies that were spoken before the Sanhedrin, each of which are there. And then we find Peter's betrayal, Peter who was so close to the Lord, and yet he left him and he denied that he was even a disciple of his. And in the midst of all of that violence, that darkness, that sin that we see, and we cannot separate ourselves from that as well, because sometimes in our own lives we tend to betray, we tend to speak words that will hurt, we tend to advance ourselves over and above other people by whatever means we may need to take. And so it's not just a matter of looking at Judas and the disciples and Peter and saying, wasn't it awful what they did? We need to look within our own lives to see how we too have been part of that sin and are part of that sin, that darkness and that death, that violence, that pain that is so very much part of the world in which we live. But Jesus came into that world and he inserted himself into that world to conquer sin, to conquer darkness, and to conquer death. And what we have today is that wonderful expression of how it is that God has entered our human world of sin, how he has conquered it, and how he has revealed to all of us that all of these things can be swallowed up, if you will, and enveloped by the power of God's love, a love that is revealed in these Passion accounts as a love that has no bitterness, no vengeance, no lack of patience, and only knows the overpowering love of God that he has for each one of us.